Welcome back to Investor Diaries, folks. Today, we're going to talk about a very interesting company called Uber. It trades on NYSE under the ticker symbol UBER. So to talk more about this, we have Aprajit with us. So Aprajit, can you help us understand what Uber, the company is, and how it all started in the beginning?
Yeah, absolutely. So Uber, of course, we all know what the company does. It helps passengers go from one place to the other. It operates in the Eats segment and it has some other lines of businesses. Uber made its IPO in May of 2019. It was one of those unicorns. So a unicorn would be a privately held startup with a valuation of $1 billion. Interesting enough, at that point of time, Uber's valuation had reached $90 billion. So if I look at the stock price today of Uber and then try to do a market cap, we'll actually reach a valuation which is less than $90 even after the stock has actually gone up. So there's definitely a lot of things happening with the company. And when it made its first filing with the SEC, it said that it looked as a $12 trillion market opportunity. And this $12 trillion, Uber broke it up as $5.7 trillion for mobility, a $2.8 trillion for its Eats business, and a $3.8 trillion for its freight business.
Thanks, Appy, for the overview. So what's unique about Uber's business model? What is it all about? And I understand that it operates in a very tough segment. So can you help us understand more about its business model?
Absolutely. So it's a very, very tough segment to operate in. And the reason is that it's very difficult for a customer to develop a loyalty towards Uber. So for instance, if I'm in North America and I'm actually taking a trip from point A to point B, I can go via Lyft, I can go via Uber because Uber's the competitor. If I'm there in, say, Singapore, I probably can go to Grab and then so on and so forth. So for me, price is probably the only differentiating factor why I would travel via Uber. And funny enough, even the drivers themselves have multiple apps because none of them essentially work for the company.
Yeah, that's a very interesting fact. The customers are not loyal to the app because they don't have to be loyal. All they care about is who can get me to from point A to point B in the cheapest mode. And the other key thing is also the other competitor is also probably taxis, local taxi operators. I guess they're not very price conscious, but some people just prefer to take in a travel in a taxi because for other reasons like insurance, etc. And with respect to drivers too, drivers are not employees; they are contractors with Uber, right? So that's probably another interesting factor. So thanks for that information. So let's talk about from a competition standpoint. There are so many different competitors in different geographies for Uber. So can you help us understand a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you hit the nail on the head when you spoke about the local taxis because that will always be a competition. Think about it this way. For instance, you are traveling from Boston to a different country and you don't have internet on your phone, but you probably have some local currency. So you will get through the local taxi. For you to actually take an Uber, you need to have an internet connection. So the local taxi will always be a competitor to you. To what degree or to what extent? It's a matter of question. Now, as far as competitors are concerned, I'll speak about three, although there are many other competitors. So the first one that I'll speak about is Lyft. Now, Lyft essentially is in North America, so in Canada, in the United States. It does the exact same thing as Uber does in the ride-hailing segment. Lyft is not there in the Eats business. One of the other interesting competitors that I would like to speak about is Grab. Now, Grab is a Singapore-based company which provides a variety of logistics and ride-hailing services through its mobile app in Asia, say Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Myanmar. And one of the interesting things that they've done is towards the end of 2016, it introduced a messaging service on its app which allows communication in different languages. So the language is no longer a barrier. And the other one that I would essentially like to talk about is Ola. So Ola operates in India. it probably has a market share of more than 60% and it has more than 150,000 bookings in a day.
Okay, so let's discuss its stock price and financials. So, Appy, can you shed some light on the stock price?
Yeah, so it started the year at about 30. In the March of 2020, when all the stocks were getting beaten down, it was at $13. But the stock has done considerably well after that. The stock is right now trading at about $48.
Okay, interesting. So let's talk now about the path to profitability. So I know Uber has done a lot of great things, a lot of great initiatives. It has tried to go into multiple lines of businesses. And so let's talk about how and when does Uber actually turn profit?
Agreed. So it's a really important question. One of the things, Nidesh, that Uber's done in the past few years is that it looks at regions in which it thinks it can make a profit and it cannot. Dara himself has said that if the Eats business cannot make profit or cannot be the first or second in a country, they would look to pull out of the market. So for instance, Uber Eats actually pulled out of India. So there's no Uber Eats in India, and I think they sold their business off to Zomato. And then similarly, in a non-cash deal, Uber picked up a 27.5% stake in Grab, though the actual numbers kind of remain undisclosed. In 2016 and 2017, it also departed two earlier markets that were seen as key to Uber's growth during Travis's time, who was the previous CEO, that is China and Russia. These all exits was clearly articulated by Dara in 2019 Q4 results. He said that growth at all costs, that era is gone. We are not looking at growth at all costs. However, we are looking at profitable growth. So if we are able to convince ourselves that we will turn profitable at one point of time, we will continue business only in that circumstance.
Okay, interesting. So let's now shift gears and talk a little more about the financials. So can you give us a little more insights into what the financials look like currently?
Yeah, exactly. So we will look at financials from the previous quarters. So in the previous quarter, Uber posted revenues of $3.1 billion, down 17% from a year ago, and a tad below the street consensus at $3.2 billion. It lost 62 cents a share in the quarter, a few pennies probably better than the street consensus at 65 cents. The company said that its mobility revenue, which is the core rides business, had revenues of $1.4 billion, and this is 51% down. Whereas the delivery revenue was $1.5 billion and it was 124% up. So the company is really doing well as far as its Uber Eats business is concerned, not so much the rides business. The company's freight business revenue was at $288 million, up 32%. So as you can see, the freight business is still in its kind of nascent stage. So it will take a little bit of time before it's able to make a significant dent to the bottom line of the company. Gross bookings fell 10% year on year to $14.7 billion, with mobility down 50% and the delivery up 135%. All in all, the company's net loss was $1.1 billion, including about $183 million in stock-based compensation expense. We'll look at the monthly adjusted EBITDA, which is the earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation and amortization. It was at $245 million at a margin of 17.9%.
So let's talk more about the pandemic. How has this situation affected Uber as a company, and how has it changed Uber's outlook?
Yeah, so for a lot of folks, they're actually working from home these days, similar to myself, and that's why the number of Uber trips that people have taken over the past 7, 8, 9 months, that has reduced considerably. As far as the Uber Eats business is concerned, that has picked up considerably. Uber's also doubled down by acquiring a rival called Postmates in US for $2.6 billion. So let me be very clear, Nidesh, with what my thoughts are on Uber right now, it is the absolute best time for any company that's in the business of food delivery. Restaurants were kind of completely closed for dine-in service during the worst of the pandemic in many areas. Capacity limits are still in place. Some cities are in lockdown. At the same time, restaurants have been forced to turn to delivery just to survive. This is the golden age of third-party delivery service, and even the overwhelming market leaders have not been able to make the numbers work out. Nobody really cares about which company is bringing the food to you. If they like Chipotle, they'll actually be okay getting the food from anywhere. So it eventually boils down to the numbers, and once the pandemic goes away, their Eats business is going to suffer big time.
Yeah, that's an interesting point for you. So I was reading the other day as well. Prior to the pandemic, restaurants were actually uncomfortable with Uber Eats and DoorDash, all the delivery businesses, because of the commissions and the margins that these companies charge on their foods. And the restaurants were thinking, why do we have to cut our share of business? Some even went to the extent of saying we would not have Uber Eats on our restaurant. We would not put our restaurant on that platform, or DoorDash, or whatever it might be. However, things have changed now. Restaurants now see this, they are dependent on Uber Eats or DoorDash or one of the other food delivery companies to ensure that the loyal customers remain loyal. So it's a very interesting point. It's a very interesting shift in thinking, this whole pandemic. So you've provided a lot of great insights, Prajit, and thanks a lot for that. I think our viewers have got a better understanding of what this company is all about. So in order to conclude, what would you recommend to our users if there's someone out there who's considering getting into Uber or buying Uber stock? What would be your final recommendation to that person?
Right. So Uber today is valued at about $85 billion. It's near about its all-time high. The food delivery narrative fundamentally doesn't really make sense to me. Once this pandemic goes away, the food delivery business will go down. COVID-19 definitely has put a dent in the books of Uber. However, the company was grappling with a lot of issues even prior to COVID-19. So if I were genuinely interested in buying the stocks of a company, of Uber, I would at least wait for 3 consecutive quarters of profit before even thinking about buying stocks of Uber, because the story or the narrative of Uber has continued and carried on for way too long. From my personal point of view, I do not recommend buying stocks of Uber because Uber just doesn't have the business model to turn its books towards sustainable profits.
Okay, thanks. So that really helps conclude our narrative or our view on Uber. We have also read or wrote an article about Uber a couple of months back, and it has more details and more insights into that. So this was a short summary, but if there are viewers out there who's more interested to know about Uber, we'll put a link to that article in the description. So feel free to check it out. So with this, I'd like to conclude this segment, and I thank Aprajit for giving all the valuable insights on Uber. So thanks folks for joining in, and stay tuned for our next video.
Thank you.